You're about to listen to a Metal Express Radio exclusive interview. Head on over to metalexpressradio.com for our latest rock and metal interviews. And while you're there, check out our web radio, read our reviews, and rock and metal news. Enjoy the interview.
Metal Express Radio is pleased to present one of the busiest drummers in metal to the scene, Mike Portnoy. Hi, Mike. How you doing?
Good. How you doing?
We're doing great here. So we're here really to talk about your current project, which is the Winery Dogs. For people who may not know what you guys are about, do you want to give a little overview of who's in the band?
Well, the Winery Dogs is myself and Billy Sheehan and Richie Kotzen. And it's a full-on classic rock power trio. And we're all very, very excited about it. The album came out a couple weeks ago here in America, and the international release, I think, is in a few weeks. And so far the response has been just completely over-the-top positive. And the tour began a few weeks ago in Japan, and we did some shows in South America and some shows in America, and we're heading over to do a full European tour starting next month in September.
Great. Let me rewind a little bit. I'm a big fan of the VH1 Classics, that metal show. I'm not too sure how many of our international listeners get a chance to see that. But so back in October of 2011, you were actually on that show with John Sykes, and you had started a band, or were going to start a band. Is the Winery Dogs a follow-up to that not happening with John?
Yeah, follow-up is the right word, because some people have mistaken the Winery Dogs for actually being the same band with just Richie replacing John, and that's not the case at all. Actually, the Winery Dogs is indeed, like you said, a follow-up. It's a completely different band. Initially, in 2011, I was working with John on some of John's material, and I brought Billy Sheehan on board for that. And long story short, it just never took off. John is just, let's just say, a lot slower of a worker than I am, and was just hesitant to make moves forward to get into the studio and start the album and commit to a record label. And there was just a lot of decision-making that John was hesitant to go forward with, and Billy and I just began to get very impatient in the waiting and the stalling process. So Billy and I decided, we wanted to do something together, so let's just, do something different. And that's when our good friend Eddie Trunk from that metal show, coincidentally, suggested Richie. And once Richie came on board at the beginning of 2012, the three of us formed the Winery Dogs, and that's where it began. And we wrote all of this material from scratch with a completely clean slate, having nothing to do with any of the stuff that I was working on with John.
Right. So you mentioned that Eddie mentioned Richie as the position. It's weird to me that that name never came up with Billy, since Billy did work with him before on Mr. Big. So. Yeah,
it is. Billy still jokes to this point how he kicks himself for not having thought of it. But yeah, as soon as Eddie suggested it to me, I immediately went to Billy and wanted to make sure that there was no negative history between the two of them before I reached out to Richie. And Billy was like, no, Richie's awesome. And Billy, like I said, Billy was kicking himself and not thinking of it on his own. But the two of them were very excited in reuniting.
Okay, so you mentioned that all the writing was done from scratch after Richie had joined, so there was nothing that you had saved from prior to him joining the band, it sounds like. So what was that
That's
process?
Correct.
What was that process like? The songwriting, the music writing?
It was immediate and completely natural and organic. The three of us got together at Richie's house, and no exaggeration, within the first day we had already written about 4 or 5 songs.
Wow.
And the second day we wrote another 3 or 4. I mean, it just happened that quickly and that naturally. The songs just fell out of us effortlessly.
Right.
And it was a true collaboration. The three of us just sitting in a small room, and a riff would go on the table, and from there we would all jam on it and expand upon it and arrange it and start kicking around different melodies and chord progressions and grooves, and and we just built this catalog of songs within days.
So when you guys started out, were you guys targeting any kind of musical style or feel?
There was not a single discussion about it. We just let nature take its course, and whatever came out of us naturally came out, and that's what became the Winery Dogs. I guess it was just a natural sound and style based upon our three sounds and styles. I guess those two have a definitive sound and style that definitely is part of the Winery Dogs, whereas I come from a much different background with progressive music and a lot more metal music. But I'm such a music fan that I'm able to kind of morph with whoever I'm playing with, whether it be the Winery Dogs or Flying Colors or Transatlantic or Adrenaline Mob. Each one of those bands are very, very different styles, and I'm comfortable morphing stylistically with the people that I'm surrounded with. And that was just the case with Billy and Richie. Once we started jamming, this kind of classic rock, kind of blues-oriented style naturally came out, and for me it was very natural to play along and contribute in that vein.
Right. I mean, a lot of people, I think, on first listen will say, well, it sounds a lot like Richie Kotzen's solo stuff, and I say, no, not really, because you got the rhythm section just is much more power and much more edge to it than I think some of current Richie stuff in my mind.
Well, I mean, inevitably it's going to have a lot of Richie's stamp on it because he is the singer and he's the guitar player, which are, in any band, the two most predominant instruments, to a first listen. But of course, I mean, it's definitely Billy Sheehan on bass and it's definitely Mike Portnoy on drums. I mean, you can hear me and Billy, our personalities and our styles, very, very, very specifically. And that goes with the writing as well. Billy and I had a lot of contributions to the arrangements and the riffs as well.
What about lyrics? Was that shared among all three of you guys? Lyric writing?
No, the lyrics were all Richie's except for one song which I wrote, which was You Saved Me. But for the most part, we kind of assumed that Richie was going to be the lyricist and the person to write the melodies because he's the lead vocalist. And that was kind of unspoken. We kind of just naturally let him do his thing. But when we wrote the music to You Saved Me, I really was inspired to pick up the pen for the first time since Dream Theater and write something. I wrote those lyrics and those melodies.
And from the start, was it always that Richie was going to do all the vocals, actually? Was there anything tossed around about you or Billy singing anything?
We knew all along that Richie was going to be the lead vocalist because he's a powerhouse singer, he's a tremendous vocalist. And, when you have somebody that could sing like he does, there's no reason for Billy or I to be doing lead vocals. Richie's really one of the greatest singers I've ever heard, much less worked with. So it was kind of assumed that he was always going to be the lead vocalist. But Billy and I do sing on every song, and there's a lot of three-part harmonies going on, and the three-part vocal attack is an important element to this band, something that we definitely wanted to have a la King's X. We wanted to have that element, but it was always understood that Richie was going to be the lead vocalist.
Right. How did it go as far as finding a producer and label? Did you have a hard time finding a label at all?
Well, we self-produced, so we didn't have a producer.
Okay.
And the reason for that was that it was so natural and quick once the three of us started working together. We didn't want to mess up that chemistry with a fourth person and opinion. And all three of us have been around the block for long enough that we know how to make records and we know how to write songs and we know how to, record instruments that basically we felt that we had enough chemistry between the three of us to leave that chemistry be and let us produce the record ourselves. As far as the label goes, that all came afterwards. We did the album completely on our own at Richie's studio, and then once it was done, we began shopping it and talking with different labels across the world. And we ended up signing different deals for different territories, which is the reason why we've had these staggered release dates. which I know, it's been a big question mark by the fans all around the world, why it's being released in July in some places, in May in other places, in August in other places. That's only because it was our first album, and we set up these deals with different labels at different times. Surely when we do the second album, it will be a simultaneous release worldwide.
Great. So you've also got 3 videos released. I think that's mainly on YouTube, so that's pretty exciting too.
Well, the funny thing about those videos is that we didn't think they were really going to get nearly as much attention as they did. We were just going to get together and shoot a couple of performance clips just for like an electronic press kit for the label in Japan, and we thought that they would never go beyond the Japanese audience. And next thing we knew, they were blowing up all across YouTube and getting hundreds of thousands of hits. They were supposed to just be a small, low-budget performance thing. And the funny thing is, we were never even supposed to shoot Elevate. It was supposed to be just Desire and I'm No Angel. And after we shot those 2, we found ourselves with a few hours left over. So I was like, well, okay, why don't we shoot Elevate? But none of the 3 of us had really learned it to lip sync. So you could see in that video the 3 of us struggling to try to learn our parts and, play our parts and mime our parts and completely fucking it up and laughing. And the funny thing is that video was never even supposed to happen, and it ended up being the most viewed of the 3.
And Elevate was the first single, quote unquote, right, from the album?
Yes.
Okay. So that seems to be odd that you planned to shoot no video for it then.
Well, like I said, these weren't supposed to be videos. These were supposed to be just electronic press kit things. And when we shot them, it hadn't been determined which were going to be the singles. It was much later on that Elevate was chosen to be the first single. But at the time, we were only going to do these little performance videos for Desire and I'm No Angel. And,
right. So you guys...
the game plan changed once we were actually doing them.
Right. So you guys have also been hitting the streets pretty hard. You've already been touring in the States, and you've got a lot of plans here to go overseas outside of the U.S. The next month or so, correct?
Yeah, we've already traveled the world within the course of 2 or 3 weeks. We started in Japan, 3 shows there, all were sold out. Then we went down to South America and played 6 shows down there, and they were all sold out. And then we came up to America for 4 one-off shows on the East Coast in the States. So, within the course of a couple of weeks, we pretty much covered the globe, at least the far edges of the globe. And now, starting next month, we're going to get a little bit more stretched out and head over to Europe. And we have I think a 3-week run of Europe, and then from there back to America to do a full American tour. But I mean, this is definitely a live act. And we really can feel the connection and the great response from the audience on stage. So we're looking forward to playing everywhere over the course of the next year.
Have the fans been responding as well to? Have they been promoting the CD sales at this point, the countries that you're out in?
Well, it seems to be because the album entered the U.S. charts, the Billboard charts, at number 27. So it's a top 30 album. And that shocked us. That shocked us for several reasons. First of all, because, it's the debut album from a brand new band. And I've done that with Transatlantic and Flying Colors and Adrenaline Mob. So I've done debut albums from brand new bands many times through the past few years, but none of them ever charted anywhere near this high. So that was a big shocker. And it says a lot for, the label getting behind this release and setting it up. But the other shocking reason is that it had already come out in Japan about 6 weeks prior, and we were convinced that was going to absolutely kill the American release, because with illegal downloading and torrent sites and all that kind of stuff, it had leaked at least a month prior. So, when it entered the U.S. charts so high, it was just amazingly shocking and amazingly exciting and satisfying. We were all blown away by that, and so happy about it.
And you did mention you guys are talking about a follow-up release, right?
We're talking about many follow-up releases. I mean, we don't view this as a one-off project. We absolutely are in this for the long haul, and this is the new band and the new home for all three of us. We've discussed that specifically between the three of us and our management and our label. And yeah, this is a new band. This isn't just a side project.
Do you have leftover material from the first album that you're looking to put on the second, or starting from scratch?
No, we basically wrote 14 songs and used all 14 songs when we were in the studio. We basically wrote until we felt like we had an album's worth of material, and that's what we recorded. And so it was 14 originals. We also recorded 8 covers, which are kind of sitting on the shelf at the moment. But, that was 22 tracks recorded in that session. So that was probably the most fruitful session I've ever been a part of.
Right. So one other announcement you made this summer, which broke my heart, was that you've decided to leave Adrenaline Mob, I hear. Can you talk about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, it breaks my heart too. But the reality is I can only be in so many places at the same time. And, I knew when I ended with Dream Theater, I was going to do many, many multiple things and plant many musical seeds and see which grew. And, Adrenaline Mob, I devoted the past year or so, or more, even more than that, to whatever they needed from me, whatever touring, whatever promotion, and basically we were pretty much looking to be at the end of the tour cycle for the band because there was really no other offers on the plate and nothing else happening. And now it was the Winery Dogs time. And but the Adrenaline Mob guys want to keep working and start work on a new album. And basically I had to say, look, I can't be in two places at the same time. And I guess that's the unfortunate thing when you're doing so many multiple bands and projects is inevitably the schedules are going to clash. And so far I've been able to cruise the past 2 or 3 years without that clash and without having to make a decision and cutting one loose. But I guess the shoe finally dropped and we finally came to that crossroads where I needed to make a decision. And, to be honest, the Adrenaline Mob thing, I gave it my best and I really believed in it. But, I don't think it took off like we had all hoped, whether that be a label thing or a management thing or
Right.
or just a public perception thing. It was kind of at the end of its cycle, and the Winery Dogs was firing up, and it was time to give that all I can and give that its fair shot. So inevitably something had to give.
Right. Next month you have a CD coming out called Live in Tokyo, where you play with Derek Sherinian, Billy Sheehan, and Tony McAlpine. So, what was that about, and how did that come about?
Yeah, not only CD, but Blu-ray and DVD as well. And basically, it's a concert from Tokyo from last November. We went and did a European tour and an Asian tour throughout October and November of last year. And it was a lot of fun. It's basically an all-instrumental band, and the polar opposite of what me and Billy are doing in the Winery Dogs. Winery Dogs is all very song-oriented, vocal-oriented. It's nice to have something else with Billy that's instrumental and shred and technique-oriented, and basically we're playing all songs from all of our individual and collective pasts. So, stuff that me and Derek did in Dream Theater, and stuff that Derek and Tony did in Planet X, and stuff that Tony and Billy did on Tony's solo albums, and so on and so forth. And it's just a great Blu-ray DVD to capture this really unique one-off project.
Yeah, so you've had the great fortune of playing with some great guitarists, namely, John Petrucci, Paul Gilbert, Tony McAlpine, of course, Richie Kotzen, and probably several others I'm not even aware of.
Steve Morse, don't forget Steve Morse.
Steve Morse, yeah. So it must be a thrill to play with some of those people. I mean, they've made their mark in musical history.
Absolutely. I mean, I've been blessed to be surrounded by so many amazing guitar players and musicians in general. I mean, the list is quite incredible. But even in the past 3 years or so since leaving Dream Theater, the list is incredible. Richie Kotzen, John Sykes, Steve Morse, Paul Gilbert, Tony McAlpine. It's been incredible.
Right.
I should also mention, talking about Steve Morse and talking about the PSMS DVD, there's also a live Flying Colors DVD, Blu-ray, and CD, which is coming out in October. which is also from a tour I did in 2012.
Cool. So one of those trivia thing I was going to throw at you, maybe for some Portnoy fans, is that I was digging at a bookstore in a used CD rack, and I came across this thing called Cygnus and the Sea Monsters. One night in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Growing up with the Marty Krofft show, I kind of pulled it out to see what it was about, and I was surprised to see you and your drum kit on the back with Paul Gilbert and Jace McMasters, where you guys did a couple of Rush covers. So that was from 2006.
That's one of 4 tribute bands that Paul Gilbert and I have done. Paul and I have done tribute bands for Rush, Led Zeppelin, The Who, and the Beatles. And the Cygnus one, that was the Rush tribute we did.
Right, so those are a lot of fun, I assume.
A total blast. Yeah, I mean, Paul is very much a kindred spirit to me musically, you know, in terms of being just such a big music fan and a musical historian and jukebox. So he and I have that in common, and these 4 tribute bands we've done have all been so much fun, and each one of them so much different from each other.
Great.
But yeah, those are all available on my website on MikePortnoy.com. So
cool.
Anybody that's unaware of them, those are really fun things to check out.
Okay. Well, we thank you for being with us, Mike. And before we go, I'll let you have the microphone, and you can say whatever you want to your fans and listeners that are listening in. So go ahead.
Well, just thank you, everybody, for the support. You know, I'm very excited about what's going on with the Winery Dogs, and that's where I'm at right now, and that's what, you know, I'm going to be focused on for the rest of the year into next year and beyond. So come on out and check out the show and you know, pick up the album. And you know, me, Billy, and Richie are all very proud of this band. So, you know, we look forward to a bright and exciting future together.
You just listened to a Metal Express Radio exclusive interview. Head on over to metalexpressradio.com for our latest rock and metal interviews. And while you're there, check out our web radio, read our reviews, and rock and metal news.